to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. This house of laughter and silence, memory and hope, is hallowed by our presence together.
I want to welcome everyone to our community church, and today especially to the mothers out there in the audience. And also a special greeting to visitors, people here for the first time.
Let America be America again, by Langston Hughes. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream the dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great strong land of love where never kings connived nor tyrants schemed that any man could by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be the land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic greed, but opportunity is real and life is free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white, wooed and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in the ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker sold to the machine. I am the Negro soul. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today, despite the dream, beaten yet today. Oh, pioneers. I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years, yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream. For I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore, and Poland's plain, and England's grassy lea. The free? Who said the free? Not me. Surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for to pay. For all the dreams we've dreamed, and all the songs we've sung, and all the hopes we've held, and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay, except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again. The land that never has been and yet must be the land where every man is free, the land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain, must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose, the steel of freedom does not stand. From those who live like leeches on people's lives, we must take back our land again, America. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the wrath and ruin of our gangster men, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we, the people, must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, and all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again.
Today, the masses of people in our country face a downward trend of economic and social conditions. In the past, our nation committed genocide of our indigenous people. We kidnapped, tortured, and enslaved African people, and our racism remains in one form or another to this day. Atrocities have been for the benefit of a small craven, ruling class that has become stronger with the passage of time. We live now with the illusion of democracy. The classic technique of divide and conquer has worked well. In this multi-ethnic country of ours, to serve the 1/10 of 1% that runs our economy. What should we do? What can we do? Speak up, act up, while we still can. Be a voice for liberty and justice for all.
Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way our struggle survives.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. I'm a woman who speaks in a voice, and I must be heard. At times I can be quite difficult about no man's word. He who believes in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Joining us today on this Action for Justice Sunday is Chris Hedges, well known to those of you who are alarmed, outraged, confused, and/or downright frightened by the turn of this country over the past generation. That would be in civil rights, free speech, waging endless war, shredding the social net for our most vulnerable. Mr. Hedges has been a columnist, a foreign correspondent, and an investigative journalist for many years. He was with the New York Times for 15 years and also worked for the Christian Science Monitor and NPR, as well as other media outlets. Indeed, he's really a member of an endangered journalistic species in this era of corporate soundbite media. With a passion for truth-telling and a largeness of moral perspective, he has addressed numerous weighty issues, from the American fascism of the right wing to the death of the liberal class. The latter issue is the focus of today's talk. Be prepared to be stimulated and possibly downright provoked, and hold those thoughts for our conversation with him at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Chris Hedges.
The Occupy movement, along with the uprisings around the globe, is the last force left that has the capacity to halt the corporate destruction of the ecosystem and the reconfiguration of this nation, as well as the global economy, into a frightening neo-feudalism, a world of masters and serfs. It will as well be the force that will revitalize traditional Christianity or signal its moral, social, and political irrelevance. The mainstream church, battered by declining numbers and a failure to defiantly condemn the crimes and cruelty of the corporate state, as well as vigorously attack the charlatans of the Christian right whose misuse of the gospel to champion unfettered capitalism, bigotry, homophobia, and imperialism is heretical, has become for many a marginal force, especially the young. Outside the doors of our churches is a movement driven largely by young men and women, which has as its unofficial credo the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall possess the earth. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for justice, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons and daughters of God. And blessed are they who suffer persecution for justice' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It was the church in Latin America, especially in Central America and Augusto Pinochet's Chile, which provided the physical space, moral support, and direction for opposition to dictatorship. It was the church in East Germany that organized the peaceful opposition marches in Leipzig that would bring down the communist regime. It was the church in Czechoslovakia and its 90-year-old cardinal that blessed and defended the Velvet Revolution. It was the church in Poland that provided the physical space and moral grounding for solidarity. The church, especially the African American church, made possible the civil rights movement. And it is the church which can make manifest its commitment to the gospel and nonviolent social change by turning out today in the street. If these nonviolent movements fail, they will eventually be replaced by ones that employ violence. And if they fail, they will fail in part because good men and women, especially those in the church, did nothing. Where is the institutional church now? Where are most of the clergy? Why do so many church doors remain shut? Why do so many churches refuse to carry out the central mandate of the Christian gospel and lift up the cross? Someday they are going to have to answer the question, where were you when they crucified my Lord? I was arrested in November when other Occupy protesters and I sat down in front of the entrance of Goldman Sachs and refused to leave. We had spent the morning with Cornel West in Zuccotti Park, holding a people's hearing of Goldman Sachs, which gave those who had lost jobs, including New York City public school teachers, and those who had lost homes to foreclosures, a voice. As I sat on that sidewalk and closed my eyes, I saw faces. They were not the faces of the smug Goldman Sachs employees who peered at us through the revolving glass doors and lobby windows, a collection of middle-aged fraternity and sorority members. They were not the faces of the blue-uniformed police, with their dangling cords of white and black plastic handcuffs, or the thuggish Goldman Sachs security personnel whose buzz cuts and dead eyes reminded me of the East German secret police, the Stasi. They were not the faces of the demonstrators around me, the ones with massive student debt and no jobs, the ones whose broken dreams weighed down on them like a cross, the ones whose anger and betrayal triggered these street demonstrations and occupations for justice. They were not the faces of the onlookers, the construction workers who seemed cheered by the march on Goldman Sachs, or the suited businessmen who did not. They were faraway faces. They were the faces of children dying. They were tiny, confused, bewildered faces I had seen in the southern Sudan, in Gaza, in the slums of Brazzaville, Nairobi, Cairo, and New Delhi, as well as the wars I covered. They were large. They were faces with large, glassy eyes above bloated bellies. They were the small faces of children, convulsed by the ravages of starvation and disease. They were faces that asked us in their helplessness, "Where were you when they crucified my Lord?" I carry these faces. They do not leave me. I look at my own children and cannot forget them. These other children who never had a chance. War brings with it a host of horrors, including famine. But the worst is always the human detritus that war leaves behind, the small, frail bodies whose tangled limbs and vacant eyes condemn us all. The wealthy and the powerful, the ones behind the glass at Goldman Sachs, laughed and snapped pictures of us as if we were a brief and odd lunchtime diversion from commodities trading, from hoarding and profit, from this collective sickness of money worship, as if we were creatures in a cage, which in fact we soon were. A glass tower filled with people, carefully selected for their polish and self-assurance that come with having been formed in institutions of privilege, whose primary attributes are a lack of consciousness, a penchant for deception, and an incapacity for empathy or remorse. The curious onlookers behind the windows and we, arms locked in a circle on the concrete outside, did not speak the same language. Profit, globalization, war, national security. These are the words they use to justify the snuffing out of tiny lives, acts of radical evil. Goldman Sachs's commodity index is the most heavily traded in the world. Those who trade it have, by buying up and hoarding commodities futures, doubled and tripled the costs of wheat, rice, and corn. Hundreds of millions of poor across the globe are going hungry to feed this mania for profit. The technical jargon learned in business schools and on trading floors effectively masks the reality of what is happening: the murder of innocence. The words of commerce are designed to make systems operate, even systems of death, with a cold neutrality. Peace, love, justice, the sanctity of life, reverence, self-sacrifice in temples of greed like Goldman Sachs are, as W.H. Auden understood, soiled, profaned, debased to a horrid mechanical screech. We have lost, at least until the advent of the Occupy movement, not only all personal responsibility, but all capacity for personal judgment. Corporate culture absolves all of responsibility, and this is part of its appeal. It relieves all from moral choice. There is an unequivocal acceptance of ruling principles such as unregulated capitalism and globalization as a kind of natural law. The steady march of corporate capitalism requires a passive acceptance of new laws and demolished regulations, of bailouts in the trillions of dollars and the systematic looting of public funds, of lies and deceit. And the corporate culture, epitomized by Goldman Sachs, has seeped into our classrooms, our newsrooms, our entertainment systems, our consciousness, and yes, our churches. This corporate culture has stripped us of the right to express ourselves outside of the narrowly accepted confines of the established political order. It has turned us into compliant consumers. We are forced to surrender our voice. These corporate machines, like fraternities and sororities in elite colleges, also haze new recruits in company rituals, force them to adopt an unrelenting cheerfulness, a childish optimism, and an obsequiousness to authority. These corporate rituals, bolstered by retreats and training seminars, by grueling days that sometimes end with initiates curled up under their desks to sleep at night, ensure that only the most morally supine remain. The strong and independent are weeded out. Only the unquestioning advance upward. Corporate culture serves a faceless system. It is, as Hannah Arendt writes, the rule of nobody, and for this very reason, perhaps the least human and most cruel form of rulership. Our political class and its courtiers on the airwaves insist that if we refuse to comply, if we step outside the Democratic Party, if we rebel, we will make things worse. The game of accepting lesser evil enables us to forget that what we accept is still evil. It enables us to rationalize the steady erosion of justice and corporate plundering. It enables corporations to harvest and defraud the nation, and finally the global economy. This game goes on until there is hardly any action carried out by the power elite that is not a crime. It goes on until corporate predators who long ago decided that the nation and the planet were not worth salvaging seize the last drops of wealth. It goes on until moral acts, such as calling for those inside the corporate headquarters of these companies to be tried, see you jailed. And the crimes of financial fraud and perjury are upheld as lawful and rewarded by the courts, the U.S. Treasury, and the Congress. And all this is done so a handful of rapacious, immoral plutocrats such as Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, who earns about $250,000 a day, and who lied to the U.S. Congress as well as his investors and the public, can use their dirty money to retreat into their own forbidden cities or Versailles, while their underlings, basking in the arrogance of power, snap amusing photos of the rabble outside their gates being hauled away by the police. Where were you when they crucified my Lord? It is always the respectable classes, the polished Ivy League graduates, the prep school boys and girls who grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, or Short Hills, New Jersey, who are the most susceptible to evil. To be intelligent, as many of them are, at least in a narrow, analytical way, is morally neutral. These respectable citizens are inculcated in their elitist enclaves with values and norms, including pious acts of charity or philanthropy, used to justify their privilege and a belief in the innate goodness of American power. They are trained to pay deference to systems of authority. They are taught to believe in their own goodness, unable to see or comprehend, and are perhaps indifferent to the cruelty inflicted on others by the exclusive systems they serve. And as norms mutate and change, as the world is steadily transformed by corporate forces into one of a small cobble of predators and a vast herd of human prey, these elites seamlessly replace one set of values with another. For these elites obey the rules. They make the system work, and they are rewarded for this. In return, they do not question. Those who do resist, the doubters, the outcasts, the renegades, the skeptics, the rebels, rarely come from the elite. They ask different questions. They seek something else, a life of meaning. They have grasped Immanuel Kant's dictum, if justice perishes, human life on earth has lost its meaning. And in their search, they come to the conclusion that, as Socrates said, it is better to suffer wrong than to do wrong. This conclusion is rational. It cannot be rationally defended. It makes a leap into the moral, which is beyond rational thought. It refuses to place a monetary value on human life. It acknowledges that human life, indeed all life, is sacred. And this is why, as Hannah Arendt points out, the only morally reliable people, when the chips are down, are not those who say this is wrong or this should not be done, but those who say, I can't. The greatest evildoers are those who don't remember because they have never given thought to the matter, and without remembrance, nothing can hold them back, Arendt wrote. For human beings, thinking of past matters means moving in the dimension of depth, striking roots, and thus stabilizing ourselves so as not to be swept away by whatever may occur, the zeitgeist or history or simple temptation. The greatest evil is not radical. It has no roots. And because it has no roots, it has no limitations. It can go to unthinkable extremes and sweep over the whole world. There are streaks in my lungs, traces of the tuberculosis that I picked up around hundreds of dying Sudanese during the 1989 famine I covered as a foreign correspondent. 250,000 people, the majority children, died. I was strong and privileged and fought off the disease. They did not. The bodies of these children were dumped into hastily dug mass graves. The scars I carry within me are the whispers of these dead, tattoos left on my body by the crucified of the earth. They are the faint marks of those who never had a chance to become men or women, to fall in love and have children of their own. I carried these scars to the doors of Goldman Sachs. I had returned to the living. I placed myself at the feet of these commodity traders to call for justice, because the dead and those who are dying in slums and refugee camps across the planet could not make this journey. I see their faces. They haunt me in the day and come to me in the dark. They force me to remember. They make me choose sides. Where were you when they crucified my Lord? I place my body in the streets because I know that it is not what we say or profess, but what we do. I have seen in my many years overseas as a foreign correspondent that great men and women of moral probity and courage arise in all cultures and all religions to fight the oppressor on behalf of the oppressed. I have seen that it is possible to be a Jew, a Buddhist, a Muslim, a Christian, a Hindu, or an atheist, and carry the cross. The words are different, but the self-sacrifice and thirst for justice are the same. And these men and women who may not profess what I profess or believe what I believe are my brothers and sisters, and I stand with them, honoring and respecting our differences and finding hope and strength and love in our common commitment. They are my congregation, and where they are is my church. At times like these, I hear the voices of the saints who went before us, the suffragist Susan B. Anthony, who announced that resistance to tyranny is obedience to God, and the suffragist Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who said the moment we begin to fear the opinions of others and hesitate to tell the truth that is in us, and from motives of policy are silent when we should speak, the divine floods of light and life no longer flow into our souls. Or Henry David Thoreau, who told us that we should be men and women first and subjects afterward, that we should cultivate a respect not for the law, but for what is right. And Frederick Douglass, who warned us power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. Find out just what any person will quietly submit to, and you have found out the exact measure of injustice and wrong which will be imposed upon them. And these will continue till they are resisted with either words or blows or both. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress. And the great 19th century populist Mary Elizabeth Lease, who thundered, "Wall Street owns the country. It is no longer a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, but a government of Wall Street, by Wall Street, and for Wall Street. The great common people of this country are slaves, and monopoly is the master." And General Smedley Butler, who said that after 33 years and 4 months in the Marine Corps, he had come to understand that he had been nothing more than a gangster for capitalism, making Mexico safe for American oil interests, making Haiti and Cuba safe for banks, and pacifying the Dominican Republic for sugar companies. War, he said, is a racket in which newly dominated countries are exploited by the financial elites and Wall Street, while the citizens foot the bill and sacrifice their young men and women on the battlefield for corporate greed. Or Eugene V. Debs, the socialist presidential candidate who in 1912 pulled almost 1 million votes, or 6%, and who was sent to prison by Woodrow Wilson for opposing the First World War, and who told the world, "While there is a lower class, I am in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. And while there is a soul in prison, I am not free." And Rabbi Abraham Heschel, who when he was criticized for walking with Martin Luther King on the Sabbath in Selma, answered, "I pray with my feet." And who quoted Samuel Johnson, who said, "The opposite of good is not evil. The opposite of good is indifference." And Rosa Parks, who defied the segregated bus system and said, "The only tired I was tired of giving in." And Philip Berrigan, who said, "If enough Christians follow the gospel, they can bring any state to its knees." And the poet Langston Hughes, who wrote, "What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?" And Martin Luther King, who said, "On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? And there comes a time when a true follower of Jesus Christ must take a stand that's neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he or she must take a stand because it is right." Where were you when they crucified my Lord? Were you there to halt the genocide of Native Americans? Were you there when Sitting Bull died on the cross? Were you there to halt the enslavement of African Americans? Were you there to halt the mobs that terrorized black men, women, and even children with lynching during Jim Crow? Were you there when they persecuted union organizers and Joe Hill died on the cross? Were you there to halt the incarceration of Japanese Americans in World War II? Were you there to stop Bull Connor's dogs as they were unleashed on civil rights marchers in Birmingham? Were you there when Martin Luther King died upon the cross? Were you there when Malcolm X died on the cross? Were you there to halt the hate crimes, discrimination, and violence against gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and those who are transgender? Were you there when Matthew Shepard died on the cross? Were you there to halt the abuse and at times enslavement of workers in the farmlands of this country? Were you there to halt the murder of hundreds of thousands of innocent Vietnamese during the war in Vietnam, or hundreds of thousands of Muslims in Iraq and Afghanistan? Were you there to halt Israel's saturation bombing of Lebanon and Gaza? Were you there when Rachel Corrie died on the cross? Were you there to halt the corporate forces that have left men and women and poor in this country, including over 200,000 people this week who will lose their unemployment benefits, bereft of a sustainable income, hope, and dignity? Were you there to share your food with your neighbor in Zuccotti Park? Were you there to become homeless with them? Time is running out The environmental crisis, if left in the hands of these corporate plutocrats, driven by obscene quests for profit and the dictates of the fossil fuel industry, will doom us. The security and surveillance state is steadily stripping us of our basic civil liberties rather than address the plight of our underclass and beleaguered middle class. Our political system has evolved into a corporate charade, a spectacle, a species of political theater. It is up to us. It requires us to act. The cross of Christ lies outside these doors on the streets of New York. And we must, with an urgency that means the future not only of our planet but our species, an urgency that calls us to stand up for life, for those children on Mother's Day who will come after us, an urgency that demands that we answer the most important question of our age. Where were you when they crucified my Lord? Thank you.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Oh, imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world
Good morning. I'm going to read an excerpt from a song written by Patti Smith called People Have the Power. I was dreaming in my dreaming of an aspect bright and fair, and my sleeping, it was broken, but my dream, it lingered there, in the form of shining valleys where the pure air recognized and my senses newly opened. I awakened to the cry that the people have the power to redeem the work of fools. Upon the meek, the graces shower, it's decreed. The people rule. The people have the power. The power to dream, to rule, to wrestle the world from fools. It's decreed the people rule. It's decreed the people rule. Listen, I believe everything we dream can come to pass through our union. We can turn the world around. We can turn the earth's revolution. We have the power. People have the power. The people have the power. I'm sorry.
We just have to take that power. The interfaith clergy held a vigil as Oakland, California police began dismantling the Occupy Oakland encampment in the early morning hours of November 14th. The piece called Occupy Paradise, written by Marcus Lafert, which I am about to read, is his account of his experience. I was willing to be arrested, to be part of something beautiful. In the early hours of November 15th, I was grappling with the question of who I am and what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist in a time when our economic and political systems are creating the injustices of hell on earth and threatening environmental apocalypse. Faced with the possibility of arrest, as police moved to clear the occupied Oakland encampment, I was uncertain whether to sit in solidarity or sleep in comfort. I wrestled with the voice calling me out to sit on the cold concrete. Would my presence matter? Was it worth spending my one day off, sleepless and in jail? In the end, it was not my intellectual critique of our current system of economic injustice that led me to stay seated as the police asked us to leave, though that is what my mind believed. It was not my anger and grief at the city's tragic resort to armed removal of the camp, though my heart was full. It was not even my commitment to the values of justice, equality, and compassion, though I hold nothing closer. It was the chance to be part of something beautiful, to link arms with warm, peaceful bodies, to sing in the face of fear, to sit behind a bank of burning candles with a banner proudly proclaiming Interfaith Coalition. I sat, sang, stood, and was arrested because it was the best way I knew how to participate in paradise, here and now. My arresting officer walked me down 14th Street, 2 blocks from the UU church that raised me. His name was also Marcus. Hey, just the same as you, man, he said warmly. I cherished the human connection we had for a few minutes in the midst of a scene that otherwise represented the forces working to dehumanize us all. For me, the Occupy movement is not really about blaming people for the mess we're in. It's not about clashing with the police. Ultimately, it's not even about Wall Street. It's about a new vision of society. It's about finding more creative ways to be in community, to have inclusive decision-making processes, to take care of those in need, and to discover who we are.
May we be sensitive to injustice. May we notice it and not turn our eyes away. May we speak against it. May we take action. May we admire our activists. May we defend them against accusations of being disruptive, loud, and inconvenient. May we support them. May we find our courage and stand beside them, activists, each of us, in our own way.